Welcome to Graphic Design Fundamentals. So glad to have you guys here today. Welcome to the new year. No matter how you feel about 2021, how it started, this is a safe space for us to have fun, for us to learn, and for us to communicate and participate with each other. So I'm so glad you're here because you could have been doing anything else, but you were here learning about graphic design fundamentals, which I'm extremely excited about. So let's find out what we're going to learn about today. Let's get into it. So let me share my screen once again. Hopefully I'm sharing the right thing here for you. Let me make sure. I know some of you guys might be a little zoomed out, but we're gonna make it fun today, so no worries. All right, you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, cool. So what are we learning today? Today we're gonna learn about what is graphic design, which is the most important thing we need to figure out first. We're gonna learn the recipe for good design. So we're gonna learn 10 principles for design. And we're also going to do a little design challenge. So that should be kind of fun. We should see what that's about. We're gonna have a little prize giveaway at the end. So hopefully you'll pay attention and we will have some fun here. And so some rules, some ground rules for all the Awesome Design Academy classes is that number one, we're here to have fun. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm not here for this to be boring. I want it to be feedback. So whether you want to turn your camera on or off, that's up to you. But please participate in the chat. Give me some feedback so I know that you guys are listening and that you're learning something out of this. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know, type it in the chat. But I'll also pause momentarily here and there so that we can get any questions in if you have it. So I'm going to say got it, and you tell me you got it. So you got it?
Got it.
All right, awesome. And then also, I have a little bit of rules for learning design. These are the 6 P's of learning that I like to incorporate because I think all these are really important to learning and understanding design. But really for today, the main thing that we need is patience. And that's really patience with ourselves as we're learning a new topic or brushing up on some skills that we may know a little bit about. Just have patience with yourself to take in the information, understand it. If you don't understand it all at one time, it's totally fine. That's what learning is. It's figuring out things and being patient with yourself. And we'll also do a little bit of practice if you like, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. All right. So you probably want to know who exactly is this that's teaching you. Some of you already know who I am, but some of you don't. So I'll just give you a little rundown of who I am so that you know that there's not some crazy person on Zoom just talking to you for 2 hours. All right. So this right here is where all the magic started for me. This is actually my grandmother's house in a neighborhood called Cherry Hill in Baltimore, Maryland. And it was a little rough outside, so I stayed inside a lot. But I was there lots of weekends, lots of summers. And at her dining room table, I would just draw. So I would open up the Sears catalog, if you guys are old enough to remember that. I would just pick a page and I would just start drawing wherever I could see. And this is probably about the age, oops, let me admit some more people in here. This is probably about the age that I was starting to get creative. I'm the one that's smiling, I'm the one that's happy. That's on my grandma's porch again. I would do sculpture, Legos, painting, drawing, cooking, model cars, chemistry sets, anything that's creative, I was all into it. And so that's what I did for a long time, but I wasn't really quite sure how that would translate into a career. And this is just some of the stuff that I did as a kid. I was doing self-portraits and drawing sketches and all kinds of stuff. But luckily and thankfully, in high school, I discovered graphic design. And once I discovered it, I fell in love with it because it just seemed like it was a good mix of the arts and business and kind of science all mixed together. And I could really see a career path for myself for that. So from there, I went on and I studied at some schools. Go Bucks. Elizabeth knows what I'm talking about. Playing the national championship on Monday. So that should be exciting. Then I went on to study at Ohio State and SCAD and learned a lot more about graphic design. That's right, Elizabeth, go Bucks. And so from there, I actually was able and fortunate enough to enjoy, which is now my 18th year professionally studying design and practicing design at many different companies and corporations, as you see listed here. So got a lot of opportunity and practice in the field to take ideas and implement them, to do a lot of branding and strategy, and to work with lots of different people. Not only that, but I was also able to freelance that whole time and do my own businesses and really be able to have an opportunity to meet lots of different people, create my own financial opportunities, because I wasn't just doing it at work, I was doing it for myself as well. And I just thought that was a really cool thing that this little girl who was at her grandma's house was now able to do all these things in her career. And just a little sample of some of the work that I've done, a very, very, very short, small snippet, because I mean, there's so many projects from successes to failures, but I showed you some of the good stuff. There's lots of bad stuff too, because that's just what happens over your career. But this is just a small snippet of some of the work that I've done. That leads us all to here today, Awesome Design Academy, in which I felt like I had so many opportunities afforded to me. So I want to give that back to the community. And for anyone who wants to learn graphic design a little bit or a lot to enhance whatever work you do, that's what I'm here for. I want to take that knowledge that I've learned and transfer that onto you. So that's what we're here for. And really, to be honest, the present is digital, the future is digital. And I think that if you can acquire any type of skill that allows you to work from any point, your home or wherever you want to be at, all you need is a computer and yourself and the information. I think that's a great skill to have and a great thing to just have in your back pocket, either for yourself personally, your job, your business, whatever. So that's a little bit about me, but enough about me. I want to ask you guys a questions. I want to see what you guys think about something. So we're gonna do a little exercise. Good design versus bad design. You just let me know what you think is the good design or the better design. And just type in the chat or let me know what you think. So which one of these do you guys think is the better design? Let me know, right or left? All right, getting a lot of lefts. No right or wrong answer. So if you say right, hey, that's up to you. But looks like we're getting a lot of lefts. Very cool. All right. Next one. Which one do you guys think is the better design, right or left? Okay, all right. Got a good consistency here. All right. How about this one? Which one of these do you guys feel are the better designs? You guys got quick fingers. All right. Maybe that's also too because two of these logos are very recognizable that you probably actually use personally, but I would have to agree with that sentiment for sure. And then last one for you. Can anybody tell me why this is an example of bad design? What's up with this? Someone says looks outdated, plain. You can feel free to talk on the mic too if you want, or if you can type in the chat, whichever one you want. Aha. Is it Sania or Sanaya? I want to make sure I say that right.
Sanaya.
Sanaya, all right. Sanaya is absolutely right. I don't think I want to grab the top of my refrigerator, grab a spray to cook my food and accidentally be spraying some insect killer because two cans look exactly the same. It is probably toxic, yes. And it's not a good idea to have a design that's similar in look, but very different in use. So that's a bad example of design. And yes, Catherine says the floor cleaner looks like some sport water, like some soda or something. So yeah, I could totally see myself like just putting that in the fridge and not even paying attention. And then, bam, you'll go to open that up and you realize that's not what I wanted. So this is a bad usage of design because even though visually there's nothing wrong with it, functionally it's what they've used it for is too similar to other things that we recognize and it doesn't work for what its intended use. Yes, and Carrie said she thought that was a drink, exactly, and it wasn't. So these are just some examples. Just wanted to see where your head was at. You guys seem like you're pretty up there in the design knowledge already, so I'm confident that we're going to get through a lot and learn a lot today. Very cool. So can someone tell me exactly what is graphic design? Does anybody know? Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Is it an image to describe a product, or that's gonna be my answer. An image to describe a product, or yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there.
I think that sounds good. No problem. An image to design a product. Shannon says the ability to clearly convey art to a certain audience. Okay, yes, we're getting closer. Those two answers. Visual problem solving. Catherine. I think Catherine might have seen my presentation already. So I think Catherine might be right. But yes, the answer is visual problem solving. That's really the simplest, shortest way to put it. If we have a problem and we need to solve it visually, we use graphic design to do that. Exactly how do we do that? Well, I will show you. But I'm going to show you, here's a few examples of graphic design that I'm sure you guys are familiar with, that you've seen. But all of these are solving a problem where they're kind of like very overt or covert problems, but some of it could be to persuade, to get you to buy something, to bring recognition to a brand, to solve lots of different problems, marketing, advertising, all kinds of stuff. So as you can see, some of the stuff is very recognizable, maybe some not, but these are really great examples of graphic design. And then to put it more plainly, technically, it is a composition of imagery, like Ginger said, words and or graphical elements to make a design. So you put these things together, you can use one or both or either or, and you can create graphic design. And you also need in this formula, you need obviously an idea, or you need some type of creative thinking, you need some information or data to go off of. You need some type of software or tools, whether that be just a pencil or a pen or a computer software like Adobe Illustrator or Canva. And then you need a design process in order to successfully execute design, especially if you're going to do it professionally. Process is very important. Does that make sense? Are we all on the same page? You got it?
Got it.
All right. And yes, there will be a copy of this presentation. I'm going to email to you guys after this presentation a little later today. So if it's going too fast, if you aren't able to take notes, no worries, because I'm going to have some notes that I'm going to send to you. So you'll be just fine. Cool. So now that we know what graphic design is, what is the recipe for good design? And this is where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the rules of design and what makes design good. So really, this is kind of a simple answer too. It's really just your skill plus what we're going to learn today, design principles. Those two things combined make good design. And so we're going to learn how we can combine those things to make good design. So what exactly are our design principles? These are the rules, the standards, the best practices used across as guidelines for creating good design across any medium or software. So whether you are doing web design, product design, graphic design, infographic, a business card, a logo, these principles can be used across all of those things. And let me tell you guys, I spent 4 years in college learning about these design principles. They trickled them down to us, they spoon-fed it to us. And so don't put too much pressure on yourself to learn or to understand all this stuff today, because it takes time to understand this and put it together and put it to use and to practice it. But I'm going to give you an overview. And so all that stuff that I learned in 4 years, I'm going to condense it down and give it to you today in 10 principles. And I think you're going to have a good understanding of what these things are. So I'm excited to show it to you. You guys ready? Feedback? Yes. Ready?
Ready.
All right, there we go. Thank you. So principle number 1, message. We need to have a message in our design. I think this is what maybe kind of differentiates art a little bit from design, even though there's, of course, lots of overlap because design can be very artistic. But sometimes this art can be subjective, where maybe if I just took a paint bucket and I threw it against the wall, that's art, and maybe it doesn't mean anything at all. Maybe it does, but it's subjective. But with design, there are some requirements. We do need to have a message behind our design. And like Tashana said, it needs to be directed towards its intended audience. So what is this? What is the idea? What is the story? What is the message? That's what we need to, that's the basis, the foundation of our design. And I'll show you what I mean. So if you see some of these examples, we've got this cool poster here on the left side. And even if you don't even know what this movie is about, we can tell by the design that the message is, this is somebody famous that's basically on the stage, it's got a crowd behind them. So we can already tell what the message is, even if we don't know the full context of what this is about. If you look at the top middle here, this is telling us that if we go upstairs, if we go up this escalator, there's going to be a bathroom, there's going to be some information, it's going to be accessible for disabled. So it's a lot of things that we can learn just from this simple graphic of this arrow pointing up to the right. Now, of course, a stop sign, very obvious. Red means stop, the big S-T-O-P letters on it. So that's pretty obvious. And then if any of you guys have been to Chipotle, you all know that you've seen this napkin where they tell you exactly how to eat a burrito, even though I'm pretty sure you know how to do that on your own. But just in case you don't know, they let you know on the napkin. So this is a good example of giving a message to the people through your design. So that's design principle number one. Now what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm actually going to show you design in real time, how we apply these principles to one thing and how we build it up to create a design. So we're going to start with a design example, and I'm going to show you how I build that up using all these principles. So we're going to do a flyer, and it's going to be called Beach Vacation, Come Join the Fun. And I chose beach vacation because it's kind of cold right now. I would love to be on the beach somewhere, of course, COVID free. I'm inviting you guys all to come and join me. So that's what my flyer is going to be about: beach vacation, come join the fun. But right now, it's just text. There's nothing special about this. It's not really that much of a design. So we're going to see how we can apply all these principles over time to make this into a design. So number one, message. All right. Number two, hierarchy. So this is about placing priority on elements of your layout. So that can be using text, images, or graphics. And we can express this in a lot of different ways. We can do this through size, through placement, through color. There's lots of different ways that we can show the importance of what our message is through hierarchy. And I'll show you what I mean. So as you can see here on the left side, the thing that stands out to me the most is creative visual designer. Why? Because it's the biggest thing on the flyer, on the poster. And then after that, I kind of see we're hiring because that's the next biggest size. And then kind of after that, for me, I think my eye gravitates to the top where it kind of says who is presented by Zoho Design Lab. Now you may read it a little differently, but I think most of us, for the most part, read creative visual designer first, just because it was so big and it stood out to us. So that's a usage of size for visual hierarchy. Now, of course, if you go to the eye doctor, we all know that E is at the top, so we can always cheat with the first letter, but that's obviously the first thing that we see in this eye chart. And then for this third poster, what's the first thing you guys see in this third poster?
Beer.
First thing you see, beer, exactly. Because it's like the biggest thing on the page. Now, maybe the first thing you saw was the imagery of the beer or the word beer itself, but either way, I think that's the first thing you saw before you might have read about the 2 towers of beer provided or the drinks and snacks self-pay at the bottom. So as you can see, we can use hierarchies, we can use size, we can use color, we can use placement, all those types of things to show what's most important in our message. And this is really important when you want to let people know in your design what you feel is most important, because everything can't be important. And then, because if it is, then everything is not important. So we have to put some priority on some of our elements. This making sense so far? Thumbs up. All right, cool. Moving on to the next one. So now that we have hierarchy, we've added this to our flyer. So all I've done is I made beach vacation a lot bigger than the second line. So now that we know beach vacation is what we're going to make that the biggest element on this flyer. So we're getting there slowly but surely, but we got a lot of work to do. So imagery, very important. Now this is the representation of your idea using icon, a photograph, an illustration. I mean, there's endless ways that you can show imagery in a design, and I'll show you what I mean. So we can use anything from icons to photographs to illustrations to charts to pictures of Homer Simpson, whatever we want to do. I mean, there's countless images and things out there that you can draw or take pictures of or find on stock sites to use in your design. So these are great ways to just kind of give a lot of visual interest to what you're talking about, and just bring more of that representation of that idea home to your audience. So imagery, very straightforward. And we're going to add some imagery to our flyer. So let's see what we add. All right. So we're going to add a camera, a notebook, some sandals, and a surfboard. But it's still kind of boring because it's in black and white. It's just kind of lined up there, but no worries, we will get there. So it's getting somewhere. We'll see how it goes. All right, now color. Color is design principle number 4. And these are not in any type of order of importance. This is just, I'm just numbering them for you. But color is basically, it could be a study all in itself, just like any of these principles. But basically it's a visual hue, and it can be literal or it can be symbolic, but it's something that you use to enhance your design. So we can use color based on our personal preference. Pink is our favorite color, so we use pink in everything we do, or it could be a brand standard. So if we're working with, say, McDonald's, we know that we need to use the red and the yellow because those are their brand colors. Or we can do things based off of color theory, which is basically certain colors mean certain things. So as you can see here, usually when we think of Valentine's Day, we think of pink and red. So we use those type of colors to represent love and all that good stuff for Valentine's Day. For recycling and kind of plants and earthy things, a lot of times we use the color green because that's kind of a literal and figurative color for those types of things. Now this bunch of bananas, obviously bananas are already yellow, so that's a literal type of meaning. And then Google, we use those colors for Google because those are their brand colors. Those are the colors that they want us to use. And then at the bottom corner, we see this is kind of some kind of technology kind of illustration. Looks like a kind of a video game controller. But a lot of times you will notice that a lot of tech companies use the color blue, often because the color blue incites trust. And that's one of the meanings of the color blue that you can use. So there's lots of theory and meaning behind these things. Sometimes it's literal, sometimes there's a lot of meaning, sometimes there's not. But the way that you use color can affect the way a person perceives your design. So keep that in mind. So let's add some color to our flyer and see what it looks like. All right, so it's getting a little better. Still got a white surfboard, but we're gonna work that out. Anybody got any questions so far? We good? All right. Typography. Now this for me, this is one of my favorite principles. I love typography, the use of typefaces, fonts, and letter forms to display written content, or you can use it as an artistic element. And I think a lot of people take typography for granted because they might not think it's that important, but the types of fonts and letter forms that you use in your design can change the tone and the feeling of that design, just depending on what you use. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So these are some really, really good examples of typography, I think, in my opinion. Just really creative. As you can see in the top, like left-hand corner, is the word typography, but the way that they use these letters in our artistic form, the way they kind of lay it out, it's really, really cool just to kind of capture your eye and catch your attention. So I like that. I really like the way that they've done this kind of search word with the A as a search bar. That's a pretty clever usage. And then I even like the grungy font of the 100. I don't know if you guys have ever watched that show. Unfortunately, it's over with now, but it's a great show. But these things all kind of make you feel differently depending on what they are. And so this is just a great usage of typography examples, just to see how we can use letter forms and words in ways that kind of really help our idea come out. But we can also use typography in a bad way, which I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of. So you can tell me or not tell me, you can just even look at it yourself, you don't have to say anything. But this first example, it's supposed to be kids exchange, a kid's store, but because the typography was not used well, yeah, oh wow, is it correct? We're gonna get a totally different meaning than we intended to, and I don't think anybody wants to take their kids to this particular store because we don't know what's going on there. So that's just one example of just a bad use of spacing between the words and the letters. Spacing between letters, we call that tracking. But we'll get into that much more in the typography class I have coming up later in February. Now, Big Al's Harley Davidson Club. Now, when I think about guys riding Harley Davidson bikes, I think about guys that are strong, wearing the leather jackets, maybe long beard, sunglasses. But this kind of curly Q type of fancy cutesy font doesn't make me feel that way. So maybe this isn't the right type of, but yeah, Catherine says they might love a curly Q font. I don't know. Maybe some of them do. But I know for me, I think that I'm looking for something that's a little bit more maybe grungy, a little bit more masculine. I don't know. That's just me. Now, this example here on the top right, this is a usage of a lot of hyphenation. And I know you're only kidding, Catherine. This is usage of a lot of hyphenation, which I don't particularly like just because it's unnecessary. Sometimes when you break up words that don't need to be broken up, especially in a case like this where I could just carry the word to the next line, that's kind of distracting to the reader because now I'm looking at more of what is this word actually saying versus reading the message. So sometimes you just have to think about not only the fonts that you're using, but how you're laying out your type so that in a way that the reader can best read it, it's legible, and also what's not distracting to the reader so they can get straight to the message that you're trying to tell them. And then we think about like just the spacing of words and how we fit something onto a layout. A lot of times people like to try to fit everything they can onto the screen or onto the paper. They take it all the way to the edge. But that's not practical in a lot of different ways for reading purposes and also for, if you're trying to print something out and you got it all the way to the edge, it's probably going to get cut off. So you want to give yourself some margin, some breathing room, I like to call it, just so that we can have this text kind of be well grounded and centered and it's not being stretched to its very limitations in the edges of the paper or the layout. And then again, we'll get more into tracking and kerning and the spacing of these letters. But these are just some examples of where you see Helvetica, just how kind of like the way you space letters kind of makes you read things a little differently. So Helvetica is actually a font type, as some of you guys know. But the way that they kind of spaced it out, they kind of played on the word to make it kind of look like something else. So typography, extremely important. I love fonts. I'm a font hoarder. I have so many fonts on my computer. It's really sad, but that's just me. That's just what I love. So let's add some typography to this flyer. So now we've kind of added a little kind of fun, kind of retro font to Beach Vacation to kind of give it a little bit more personality. And we've kind of refined the font, the tagline at the bottom to make it a little bit more clean, a little bit more inviting. So this is coming together, but not quite there yet. Got a little bit more to go. Contrast. All right, this is a big one. I see a lot of misuse of contrast, but I'm not going to complain about that right now. We'll talk about that later. Right now, I want to show you some good examples, but the contrast, what that is it's just an existence of opposing elements, just so that we can provide emphasis to something, or we can create some visual appeal. So you can have contrast in size, in shape, in color, in space. It's just basically opposing elements that come together to provide emphasis, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So for example, in this top left-hand picture, what's the first thing that stands out to you in this picture?
The red chair.
Exactly, the red sofa. It stands out because it's got this red on top of this black and white. So it's very, very high contrast. The second example, we see two different types of contrast, or actually three different types. We see contrast in size, the big person versus the little girl. We see contrast in shape, and we see contrast in color. So that's pretty cool. In the third example, we see more contrast in shape and size and color, but mostly I see it in color because we've got this black and white photo on top of a very bright type of kind of lime green and that dark blue. So it's a really good contrast on top of each other. And as you can see on the bottom row, just more examples of really good contrast to really bring emphasis to certain elements. So we see an emphasis on that number 17. We see an emphasis on kind of this packaging on top of this yellow background. So contrast is good, and we want that in our design. But as you guys are probably very aware, you've probably seen many PowerPoint presentations, many things at work or at school or wherever you are of bad contrast, stuff that you can't read far away, stuff like this, right? So it's either dark on dark or light on light, but you want to try to avoid this. And if you've been guilty of this in the past, I'm not contrast shaming you. We're learning today. So just remember and keep this in mind when you move forward to try to add contrast to your presentations or to your work so that people can actually read what you have to say. So light on dark, dark on light, but try to avoid the light on light or the dark on dark because it's very difficult to read. So let's add some contrast to our flyer. So what have we done? Okay, we've added some water to the top. So now we've kind of got a little swirl going there, and we've got beach vacation now in white instead of in black. And we also have come join the fun in this kind of tan color matching the beach. So now we've got some contrast going on. So now it's a little bit more visually interesting. So we're getting there. It's looking better. Does anybody have any questions so far? Is this making sense to you guys? All right, cool. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that. All right, so placement. Again, all of these are equally important. You may not use all of these every time you design, but it's always great to keep all of these elements in mind because they will come into play at some point. But placement always usually comes into play because the way you place things and position them makes a big difference as well. So placement obviously focuses on positioning of the elements and making the best use of the space that you're using. And the spacing deals with kind of the proximity. So how far or close that you have your design elements on that layout. And then alignment is how these elements line up with each other or how they line up with the overall space. So I'll show you guys some examples of what I mean by placement, spacing, and alignment. So as you can see here in this first kind of poster here on the left-hand side, it's pretty cool placement and alignment because all of the content of this poster, all the written content is in each of the four corners. And so it really brings our eye all around the layout to kind of figure out and read what's going on here. But it's an interesting placement. And then we've got this really cool kind of abstract geometrical figure in the middle. But it's really well spaced out and it's got enough white space or empty space so that our eye isn't too distracted and we can kind of navigate around that page. So I think that's a good usage of placement and alignment. And then even in this middle example, all the font, all the text is here in the bottom corner. So these big kind of contrasting lines are bringing us down to the corner bottom of that page where we're going to read about whatever it is that's going on this poster. And then in the third example, it's just a good overall use of spacing and alignment in the entire space that we have. So nothing is too close together. There's nothing that's kind of running into each other. It's really easy for our eye to navigate from top to bottom, this kind of layout of this kind of mobile app that they've got laid out here. So this is something that definitely takes practice because the more you do it, the more you realize what's functional and what's not. But placement is definitely very important in kind of how our eye navigates through the design, what we kind of read first or last, or what we see. And here's some examples of bad placement. So bad spacing. Well, we've got the massage therapist, but it could be something else too. We won't say what that is, but we see that that's bad spacing. So we got to make sure we work on that. Bad placement. So this is supposed to be a safe place, but I think it looks a little scary just because the way they place some of these images it's just not appealing. So maybe it didn't get past the graphic design committee before they released this to the world, but it's good to have another set of eyes on your work, because sometimes the way you make something, it could be interpreted totally different, just based on the way that you kind of place things. And then bad alignment. So in this text box, it looks like we've got, left, we've got something left adjusted, we've got something right, and we've got center, we've got all this type of different kind of layout of text, but it's very hard to read because it's not justified in one way, it's justified in different ways. And so it's hard for my eye to kind of read through this. It's also, lorem ipsum is not real text either. So that's another reason why we can't read it. But if it were real text, it would still be difficult for us to read. So that's kind of some examples of bad placement and alignment. But we're gonna go ahead and take what we learned here and we're gonna apply it to our flyer. So basically all we did was we kind of moved around the camera and the notebook and the sandals and the surfboard to kind of just be in a more kind of interesting placement versus just kind of being just one after the other in this kind of horizontal layout that we had before. So we're gonna see how this is gonna come together, because we've got 3 more principles to apply to this flyer. All right, now balance. This is a difficult one to apply sometimes as well, but with practice, you can definitely figure this out. So balance is just basically ensuring that we don't have any elements on the page that visually or ineffectively outweigh some other element. So we want our eye to easily flow throughout the layout, but we don't want to necessarily be overpowered by too much of something. So let's see what I mean by that. So these examples right here are some really good examples of good balance. And basically, it just kind of shows how there's not too much of this or that. It's just a really good balance of white space, a good balance of placement, all those kinds of things that make our eye easily kind of flow through the layout. So in this example at the top left of this kind of product, that's more of an asymmetrical balance where it's an unequal visual weight, but it still kind of works together. Like even though it's not exactly the same on both sides, it's still a good balance of weight, and it still helps us to just kind of see everything that we need to see. In the Entertainment Weekly poster in the middle, it's kind of like a half and half thing. Like the top part is very strong typography, very bold text with kind of a little photograph overlaid in the background. And then the bottom half is white space. But that's okay. It's okay to have white space. Don't be afraid of that. It's actually a good thing. But it basically helps us to draw our eye to that text, because if this whole page is filled up with text, it might be difficult for us to actually read everything that was going on. And then this Titanic poster, it's a great poster. This is more of a symmetrical balance, I think, because the top half is a great picture of Leo and Kate, and then the bottom half is the ship that's kind of centered in the middle. And then we've got our fonts and our typography towards the bottom. So really good usage of balance of the imagery in the text in this example. What about some bad examples of balance? We don't have any. I thought we did, but we don't. But we're gonna add some balance to our flyer here. And so what I did was I basically just kind of added some more elements on the corners. I kind of added 2 plants to kind of ground the bottom part of that flyer. And I also kind of pulled down the beach a little bit so that for a more symmetrical kind of balance, so that we have half kind of water and half beach. So it kind of looks a little bit more balanced to me. It's a little bit more grounded at the bottom with the other images that we have down there. All right, so we're almost there. We're getting close. We're a lot better than we were when we started, I would say. So this is looking a lot more inviting to me. All right. Now the tone. Now the tone really determines how we're going to feel about this design. Like, what's the attitude that we want this design to represent? What's the feeling? And this is really important, because if you're trying to persuade somebody, if you're trying to get someone to buy something or to feel empathy, whatever that may be, maybe donate to a cause, we're going to use certain imagery or typography or whatever we use to make that tone kind of come out for us. So you guys let me know what you guys think. What's the tone of this first picture in the top left? What do you guys think that tone is? Sad, grief. Mm-hmm. Suffering, that's a good one. How about the next one? With the two Christmas sweaters, what's that tone? Cheeky, okay, happy, loving, cute, fun. Yep, very good. Love, I agree. Cheerful, mm-hmm. Now, what about this movie poster here on the right? One of my favorite movies. I love The Avengers. What's that feeling? Mm-hmm. Rage, anger. It's very extreme. I would agree with that. Very extreme. What else? Give me one more. What's Thanos looking like to us? Intense. Yes. He's got his teeth clenched up. He's got his fist balled up. It's very intense. All right. What about this photo here on the bottom left? What's the tone for that? What's the nice young lady? What's her tone? Chic, sophisticated. Yeah, I would agree. Beauty, totally. What else? What else we got for her? Glamour. I agree with that. Confidence. Absolutely. That's a confident pose. Very classy, I would say. And then last but not least, what do we got for this middle bottom? What's the tone for that one? Playful, cute. Mm-hmm. She's very cute. Childlike, fun. I agree. Totally agree. So as you guys can see, like you can pull out the tone, the expression, the feeling that you want simply just through imagery. Imagery can do that alone, but you can also combine uh, typography, font on top of that to produce a certain type of tone as well. Just like we saw that Harley Davidson club with the squiggly font. That was kind of confusing because the tone of what I was expecting was not conveyed through the type. So just remember, whatever you're trying to make people feel, and remember you're solving a visual problem. So all these things should go together in order to solve that problem. So try to make sure that the elements that you're using don't contradict the original message that you're trying to portray to these people, to your audience. So let's add some tone to our flyer and see what we can do. All right, so what I've actually done here is I've added some kind of drop shadow behind all these elements because basically that makes me feel like it must be sunny, it must be hot because there's a shadow. So it's making me feel like it's this nice warm beach. Then I've got these whimsical kind of lines that I've added to the water. So it makes me feel like the wind is blowing. There's some waves. So that's a kind of a cool thing to make me want to come to the beach. And then I've added some highlights and some shadows to these imagery. So now this kind of, the boring kind of white surfboard has this little shadow on the side. So now it's giving me more of this kind of fun, kind of whimsical tone. And it makes me feel like, okay, this is starting to become a beach vacation that I want to be a part of. Because I can kind of imagine myself there. It's more realistic to what the beach would look like. Yes, this is a good flyer. All right, so last but not least, we got one more design principle, and that is form and function. And this is, again, this is one of the things that I think separates graphic design from art, even though there is a lot of overlap. But sometimes you make art, and sometimes it could be used to convey a message, and sometimes it doesn't have to. It can be subjective, or it could be objective. But mostly, I think art can be more subjective in some ways. But for design, not only does it have to look good, but it also has to function. So we're making something that looks really nice, but it also needs to be used for whatever it was intended to use. So form is the way the design looks, and function is the purpose of the design, how it's going to be used. So what do I mean by that? Well, here are some really great examples of form and function. So this wayfinding sign, the sign here in this parking lot, it's even though you may think it's a simple design, it still does what it needs to do because it's telling me exactly where I need to go to get to certain parts of this building. So it's very useful to me, and it's very clean and simple and well laid out. So that's a really good example of form and function. Now, everybody knows when you get your iPhone or you get your MacBook, whatever it is, for some odd reason, or maybe it's just me, but I keep the box. I don't know why, because I'm not going to do anything with the box, but it's just a nice box. And so it looks nice, but it's also functional because it holds all the pieces of that technology in it really well in a really compact way. And it's kind of like Christmas. You open it up and you're peeling back the layers, and you've got, your headphones, and you've got this and that, and you've got the instructions. It's just a really good packaging experience from Apple. And then we've got Google search bar, good old search bar. So simple, but it works. You type in your word and you get what you're looking for. So a really good example of form and function. And then finally, when you go to the airport, remember what those look like? I think it's been a while since I've been in one, but maybe some of you have. But the signage, whenever you have to get to your certain terminal or wherever you're trying to go, you look up at that signage, especially if you're at an airport that you've never been to, and you're trying to find where are these things at. So this is a really good example of something that is designed nice and clean so that you can read it. The typography is straightforward, so that it's legible, but also it's functional because it's helping you to get to where you need to go. All right, that makes sense? You guys got it? All right. Snaya says, yep, good. Thank you, Catherine. So how do we make our flyer, our beach vacation, functional? Well, we made it into an Instagram post. The reason why we made it a square size is because we know that Instagram uploads in a square size. It's actually 1080 by 1080 pixels for anybody who's a pixel geek like me, but that's the size that they recommend. But it's functional because we were able to take our flyer and put it into an actual technology so that we can share with the world that we're going on this beach vacation. Come join the fun. So we've actually went through all these 10 design principles: message, hierarchy, imagery, color, typography, contrast, placement, balance, tone, and form and function to create a really cool flyer. Very simple, but it gets the message across that we're trying to have this beach vacation. And just in case you don't remember the steps that we took, remember we went from just a really kind of boring text in the beginning, and we took it all the way through all the steps to get it to an Instagram post that we can actually use to invite people to our vacation, our imaginary vacation. Now we will have one day, not today, but we will have it. All right. Does anybody have any questions about these 10 design principles? Is this making sense to you guys? Does anybody learn anything new? Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. I was excited about this slide too. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Awesome. Thank you for the feedback, guys. I appreciate it. So since it made sense to you and you figured it out and you understand it, then let's do a little quiz to see if you were paying attention. All right. And some of you guys who've been in my classes already know that I like to do quizzes. Don't worry, there's no grade, there's no fail or pass. It's just a fun little quiz. I think you guys will be fine because you're all very smart and it's pretty easy. So let's go. First question. You tell me in the chat, A, B, C, or D, what your answer is. So which one of these is not a good display of contrast? Which one? Aha, B, very fast fingers. Nobody wants to feel like they're copying over anybody else. All right, that is totally correct. B is the only example here that does not show good contrast because it's that dark text on that dark background, and we want to avoid that. Awesome, very good. We're already 1/3 of the way there. Next one. Which one of these has the least amount of hierarchy displayed? The least amount of hierarchy displayed. Which one? All right, you guys are going real fast. That is totally correct. It is A. And the reason why it's A is because you could argue that, graphic design fundamentals is the first thing. It's at the top. It's the first of the order of the 3 lines. But really, there's no other treatment added to this text other than the order in which the words are presented. But in the other examples, there are some things, there are some colors added, or it's a different font weight, or things like that, or italicized. There's different things that are added to these other layouts that give them more of a visual hierarchy. So you guys are totally correct that the answer is A. And then finally, last one, which of these images is the least successful in representing this message about this ice cream social? Which one is the least successful? Yeah, I would say that I don't think I want to send my kids to an ice cream social that look like this, because it looks a little violent. It looks like it doesn't really match what I'm thinking. So, I mean, I don't know. But it looks a little off to me. So I would be a little skeptical of that particular ice cream social. But that's just me. I don't know. So very good. You guys did a great job. I knew you would ace it. I knew you guys had it down pat, so I wasn't even worried. So now what I want to do is I actually thank you. Yes, yay. Yay. I'm glad you guys did that. So I actually want to challenge you guys to do something a little bit more challenging than this quiz, because I want to give you a special prize for learning these design principles today. So if you want to actually practice this a little bit more and just see if you kind of understand these principles, I'm going to send you guys an email later on today, a design challenge, in which I'm going to give you a little preview here. You are going to do these 10 activities, all that kind of incorporate the 10 things that we've learned today. And whoever can return back to me through email your responses and fill it out correctly. You can't just like go through it and like, just do something real quick, and you gotta try to put the effort in and actually answer the question correctly. Whoever can answer correctly first will get a prize, and it will be these lovely graphic design flashcards. Hopefully you guys can see me here. But basically these and some of you guys may already have these, but basically this is a deck of 78 flashcards that I've actually created. I created these just about a year or so ago, but they're my favorite product because it's a really, really easy way to learn design. It's a whole bunch of flashcards that give you all these different terms, and they basically turn on the back and you can read what the term means. So anything from CMYK to keyboard shortcuts to what's an offset press to what's compression mean, what does it mean to optimize for the web, all kinds of cool stuff you can learn really quickly in this set of flashcards. Really sturdy, really sleek. You can get these as your prize for participating in this challenge. And I'd love to give it away to someone today. So you guys work on that if you like to, and I will be giving you that prize. Very cool. Oops. Go back to this. And then I'm going to show you guys a couple more things. Another thing that we have coming up on Monday, which is actually the 11th, not the 9th. Sorry about that. On Monday, this coming Monday, we're going to start something also as well for practice, which I told you was one of the 6 Ps, called Design Prescription. And if you follow Awesome Design Academy on Instagram, you'll see that. And basically, it's just a daily dose of short design exercises to help you practice so that you can understand and grow your skill in these areas. And we will be talking about a lot of the design principles that we have learned today. So if you don't get around to the design challenge for the day, there will be more small and short exercises that you can kind of participate in to kind of hone in your skill and to learn about design principles. Because obviously you do have to practice in order to get better. It's one thing to learn and to know, but to do is a totally different thing. And I'm really a big believer in doing in order to learn. So that will start on Monday, January the 11th, and that should be a really fun thing. And then before we close out, does anyone have any questions? Did that make sense to you guys? And of course, if you have any other questions as well, you can always send me an email as well if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you, Sanaya, I appreciate that. So one last very important thing that I want you guys to know, and that is about what is coming up for this winter design series. This is the first of 5. I'm so glad you guys are able to come. But next Saturday is actually going to be a great class as well that you don't want to miss, because we've learned about the principles today, but next week we're actually going to learn about how we can put this into practice into Canva, which is a free graphic design online tool that you can use to actually make designs. And it's pretty easy because there's lots of templates in there that you can use to get yourself started. So it's a really cool tool. And if you want to actually do some hands-on stuff and be kind of in a workshop type of setting, and you like this design, this learning style that we had today, then you definitely want to join next Saturday for You Can with Canva. Following that, we're going to learn about Adobe Illustrator, which is a design software, professional design software, where you can create illustrations, logos, flyers, all kinds of cool stuff. It's kind of a step up from Canva because if you really want to get deep into it and really get down into a software that's really made for design, then you want to learn Adobe Illustrator, which is going to be a 3-part series. It's going to be really, really fun. By the time you come out of that class, you're going to have your own custom illustrations. And then in February and March, we're going to have Typography 101, which we're going to get more deep into typography, one of my favorite things, and really learn about how we can use that in our design. And then finally in the series, we're going to tackle logo versus brand, in which we're going to learn the difference between logo and brand. Some people think it's the same thing, but it's totally not. We're going to find out why. We're going to learn how we can use it professionally and how we can also use that personally in our own daily lives. So I'm really excited for you guys to come and hopefully join for some more classes. But I'm really happy that you're here today. Don't forget to email me if you have any questions at Chanel@awesomedesign.academy. And make sure you follow Awesome Design Academy on Instagram so that you can learn more about design and also start with that design prescription on Monday. So if there's no other questions, I want to thank you guys again for an awesome class, for doing an awesome job, for participating. I really enjoyed being with you guys today. Happy New Year, and I will see you next time. All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.